Yeah, we always kick this off with a little banter, so never sure what you're going to get for our listeners, never sure what they're going to get.
Yeah, Hector was just saying, no more business, please. If we could just slow it
No,
down
no,
for the
no,
summer.
no, no,
He says
no.
he's not taking on any new clients. Right?
Yeah,
No, I'm
we're
just
way
kidding.
too busy. I need to go sit by the pool and just. No, I'm joking. Um, what's
Not
amazing is
enough
everyone
beach
wants
time
to make
happening.
decisions. Well, there's no beach here. Like I could see Manhattan, and there's no beach. So, no beach time for these guys. But we're always behind the screens anyway. So like, doesn't matter as long as there's an internet at the beach, we can figure it out from there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Green screen
exactly.
technology is getting better.
Yeah, not
I noticed both of you have green
interestingly.
screens, so
What's
you're both at the beach.
this?
Yeah.
This is actually not a green screen. I just joined a new co-working space, so the meeting rooms have a variety of backgrounds. So for the coming episodes, there's going to be like 4 or 5 different ones that I'll rotate through, all with the same terrible mic placement.
Yeah,
It's a lot of
got to
stuff I'm
figure
just
that out,
winging
man.
as we go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
well,
Including
Hector,
mic
thanks for
placement.
being
Yeah.
here. I can't believe you decided to waste a whole hour with us. So we may as well jump into it. So you're a busy man by the sound of things, other than it being, the holidays and whatnot, or the summertime. You run a few projects. You run This Week in Coworking, which recently picked up a testimonial by me as the best newsletter in the industry. You heard it here second, folks.
Yeah, I'm using that forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah, it's yours. It's yours until, if I change my mind, I'll let you know. But yeah, no, you run a great newsletter. You actually run another business that earns money, Syncaroo, where you're kind of a fractional CTO and data integrator, if I'm not mistaken. You help connect all the disparate pieces of software and bring it all home so that people can use it and interact. We're going to dive into that later on. And you also have a project / maybe a business / partnership with included.co. So we'll talk about all that stuff. But just to kind of jump right into it a little bit, like when I think about all these different pieces to your business, and if I've missed anything, let me know. What would you say, like how does this work? We Taylor and I think about how do we create a flywheel all the time? So how do we make one thing benefit the other and make things work kind of in an ecosystem or kind of a harmony? How do you see those 3 projects / businesses, and how do they kind of work as a mutually beneficial machine? And are there more parts to it?
Yeah, great question. I also, so much like you guys, it's probably why I can afford or willingly give up time to just hang out with you guys, is because we think in very similar ways. And that includes just the way we think about businesses and processes. So I'd love to take credit and be like, oh, I planned these different entities out so that they can feed each other. But that's not what really happened. Included, which was one of my first companies in co-working, came out of the frustration of having run co-working spaces, having filled co-working spaces, having launched Europe's first booking platform. As soon as someone joined a co-working space, they were like, okay, that's great. We're sharing meeting rooms, we're sharing offices, but does anyone know a good lawyer? Does anyone know how to get Amazon credits? Does anyone know how to get? And I was like, well, that's a bigger technological problem to solve, kind of sharing buying power across, at the time, 10 to 20 co-working spaces. And that's kind of how I fell back into the tech side and left the operating and aggregation side of the business. Ran that from 2015-ish. So I came over to the US to kind of help expand, grew the network out here. But we kept running into the same hurdle that integrating with Office R&D and Nexus and Cobalt and Deskworks and Optics. It was just becoming infuriating because who manages the integration? Who looks after that? It connects to an unknown black box. And that's kind of how I started blogging about this frustration. And it's eventually in 2019, I was like, I'm going to go and figure out how to fix this. Who wants to work with me on it? A bunch of folks reached out for 30-minute calls. One of those 30-minute calls became a 6-hour call with a guy called Robert Kropp, who became my co-founder now at Syncaroo. And that's how we landed up building Syncaroos. Felt the pain enough in running and filling spaces to build Included, felt the pain of integrations enough to build Syncaroo. And then in 2020, I was working with obviously all these operators around the world through either Included or some of the nonprofit stuff we're doing through European Co-working Assembly, Co-working Day, all these other things. And you open the media during 2020 and it's like, co-working is over because WeWork did this or Notel did that. And I'm like, yeah, you're talking about like 3% of the entire market. Hundreds of thousands of businesses doing amazing work, and no one was telling their stories. So I started finding those interesting links, things that they were doing that maybe could inspire others, send it to 6 people. Those 6 people became 12, 12 people became 24. And now This Week in Coworking goes out to around 4,000 decision-making teams every Thursday morning, has a podcast element, a media channel, storytelling, deep dive reports. The whole idea is just keeps compounding or stacking those benefits. To answer the initial question, why do we do all of this? What is the flywheel? If we can create more value for operators, they can build better, more sustainable businesses. And that way we grow the pie forever.
I love
Yeah.
that.
And Hector, I'm curious too. Like, I know that you said, I wish I could take credit and say that I had built these entities so that they would all feed each other and one hand would wash the other. And I think we can let's just say that you did. But even if you didn't, I know This Week in Coworking is a standalone brand in and of itself, but I'm curious, like, do you see benefits across the other two businesses from the visibility that you have gotten from doing This Week in Coworking? Like, do you see a ripple effect that goes out through the other two businesses based on building your profile and really staking out a name for yourself within the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it does come back to, what is like personal brands transcend businesses, right? For a very long time in our industry, you were someone who works at a WeWork. You were someone who worked at an IQ offices. And that was your entire personal brand. I think what you can take the example from my playbook is everything I do elevates essentially Hector's brand. And then I can lend that credibility based on what you need coming forward. So it's, on the one hand, it's definitely benefited each of the businesses to elevate each of them. But the problem is you get to this very quick like identity crisis of you walk into a room and who am I? Like either you come in and I'm like, today I'm Hector from Syncaroo, or I come in and I'm like, I am Daenerys Targaryen, Queen of the Free, whatever, 30 titles, right? And that can be really confusing.
Outstanding reference. That's one of my favorite references.
I just wish I got it right.
Yeah, that's great.
If you had nailed that entire thing, it would have been the whole
I
episode.
know. Oh, no, that would have been it. Just end. You're going to have to ask me more questions.
We got it.
Damn
it. Sorry, I cut you off, though. Back to Daenerys.
Oh, it's all right. Back to Daenerys, yeah. So you got to kind of juggle that, right? Building a personal brand can be very beneficial, but you can also really quickly fall into like, oh, am I an influencer? Do I need to like chase the views, chase the metrics, play the algorithm, all the things you should be doing for your day job? And that's a really, really tricky one, right? Even times I find myself like checking my LinkedIn. I'm like, why am I, it doesn't matter how many people, because our audience is not that big, right? And so it's really, really tricky building that personal brand and knowing that my work at Syncaroo is really important. The CIO, the execs that I support personally at Syncaroo, they rely on what I know and what I see and what I understand from my other businesses, but it's not the other businesses that they're hiring, right? And then the flip side, someone comes to, This Week in Coworking, they want to promote a new product, a new solution. They want to talk about their co-working space. They want to buy their co-working space or sell a co-working space. That's a very different conversation to if they were like, hey, we don't know what is in our tech stack. Our team is busy all day. So I have to kind of be very good at drawing those lines, because otherwise it becomes a very confusing conversation. So yes, it definitely feeds into each other, but it also confuses each other if you don't manage it.
Yeah, and I had this question for later on in the interview, but just because I feel like your response kind of went that way anyways, I'm curious, like, recently especially, you've been releasing a lot of data and a lot of insights that you get from the newsletter. So obviously, you're dividing those things and making them their own entities. But all that data that you mine from the newsletters and from the engagement that you see and all those kind of things, do you ever use any of those insights to inform how you do things in the other business? Like, are you learning from the data and the insights that you're gaining from This Week in Coworking, and is that influencing moves that you're making across the other businesses?
Yeah, and in a very gated way, right? I don't use like who opened an email to then send a cold email from Syncaroo, right? There's a very clear divide between kind of church and state on the personal information about who engages with newsletters and what they engage with and what we do at other businesses. But I am one person, right? If I am doing the 5 undercurrents and I know the 5 biggest undercurrent trends for this year are XYZ, I'm still going to feed that into, our CIO service. I'm going to feed that into our advisory services, into our tech therapy. All these pieces play together because I have only one LLM, right, in my head. And so that's everything that I know kind of put together. Um, and so, yeah, that definitely plays into it. Now, do I give, do I use any of the information in a proprietary way? Well, that's why people hire me, right? It's because I know what we're doing in the newsletter, but I can turn that into leverage. But I hope that answers the question. And we do keep things very, very separate. Like my team at Syncaroo can't see any of the stuff at This Week in Coworking, and the team at This Week in Coworking can't see who we're working with at Syncaroo.
Yeah, that's I definitely meant more in that way in terms of trends, like seeing opportunities within the industry based on what you're seeing happening, and how that kind of informs the decision making across those other brands. Like, if we were doing email marketing for a co-working space, the co-working space operator could look at trends that they're seeing in the data and tailor their approach, their services, whatever it might be. They can use that to inform the business, less so from like using the personal data to send cold emails, but definitely more so in that you have this wealth of insight into what's happening in the industry, and it must to some extent, as you said, guide kind of the decision making that you make in those businesses as far as what to go, where to go, what to do next, that kind of thing. So that's exactly what I was exactly what I was looking
it definitely
for.
does. And I also like to make sure the companies support each other. So like Syncaroo right now is sponsoring the next Undercurrents, which means the next deep dive that we do at the newsletter is all about, the next revenue stack, the future revenue stack of co-working. How are people splitting their revenue? Where is it coming from? What are they thinking about? What's been a challenge? What hasn't? And that is made free across, written, print, audio and video, and sponsored entirely by Syncaroo so that everyone can get that for free, right? So I really try, especially at the newsletter side, to get the brands that we work with in other entities to support these free resources that elevate everyone up and kind of give you a competitive advantage. So it's about kind of bringing them together, even though, yes, of course, my Syncaroo clients, they have unprecedented access to me compared to a This Week in Coworking client, who there is no way to hire me at This Week in Coworking, because then you also get into that, Dothraki question of who are you hiring? So the only way to hire me is through Syncaroo.
Yeah,
We love, by the way, we love analogies. The more you can keep on this trend here, the better.
I'm gonna see how much I can whip
the more
this analogy.
Yeah, well, the more shows you can, if there's a theme for the episode, the more shows you can reference, the better. We'll do a tally at the end and see what you come up with.
Yeah, Simpsons, those would be welcome as well.
I'm a movie and show nerd, so I love those. They're always circling back there somewhere waiting to come out.
Well, I mean, I love
Sounds
that
great.
you're treating. I love that you're treating each business and venture as kind of information gathering to inform what the market is needing and asking for, so you can shape your service offerings. And it sounds like that's what you've instinctively always done, which is great. And I think any operator listening to this would benefit from doing the same thing, is kind of following the little signals and then seeing if there's more life behind that. I'm a big believer that the deeply personal is the universal. So the more you find out someone's precise needs, the more likely many, many other people are to have those same things. So I'm really a big fan of that flywheel concept. And I think you're just getting started, even though you've been doing this a long time. I feel like what you're building now can potentially produce more elements to your flywheel down the line. So yeah, big fan of that thinking, and thanks for unpacking how it's working for you. Before we get into any other analogies though, would love to kind of hear a little bit more. So we are a marketing first podcast, but we do know that marketing doesn't live just in terms of, traffic and eyeballs. It's very much product and all kinds of stuff, but we'd love to hear how you put together your newsletter. And I asked you this at a conference once, and I think you were just like, yeah, a combination of technology and hard work and people. And you kind of just gave me a wink and then ran off to go deliver your Thursday newsletter. And because I know you do on the deadline, and you're very consistent, which is great. So can you give us a little bit of a look behind the scenes? Like Taylor would agree, we're big fans of curation, about finding resources that are relevant to an audience, which is largely what you're doing, especially when it's in a value added and has a specific target customer in mind. So you've done that really well. So how do you go about approaching this broad world of co-working and flex and bring it into a consolidated newsletter? How does that happen? Just out of curiosity.
It's a great question. And the annoying answer is systems, right? Like you've got to figure out A, what is the problem hypothesis you're trying to solve, and then B, how do you build the systems around making it manageable? The problem that we solve is there's too much noise in and around co-working. So you know what the problem set is, too much information. So the system we have to build is, how do you filter that noise into something that way you can detect signals? So I built luckily I'm a WordPress developer and a backend developer by trade. So I've done that my entire life. Since 13, I've been building web products. So I could really figure out what would it look like for me really quickly to be like, yes, no, yes, no. If I could Tinderify the news and be like, this is good, this is not, and then just add my spin or my take on why I think it's important. That allows me to help the people who read the newsletter because they don't have to go through the whole internet. And then it's okay, how do you then get better inputs so that you have better outputs? And that's when you have kind of contributors. That's when you build a network. You start, working with local partners in regions that you don't have reach or you don't have accessible, uh, good news sources. And you kind of start feeding that in. Obviously, it's a bit trickier when it comes to the news that we share because it's not just news, right? It's opinions, it's thought pieces, it's things that people didn't even realize that they've shared publicly, changes that we detect on people's websites. So there's all these little technologies that pull things into what we call the Twit curation engine. And now there's a team that goes through that and they're like, okay, this is noise. This is what we have, a system that detects AI generated content. This is a 90% AI generated content that kind of filters that out. Just getting better and better at filtering out the noise so that when it comes to a Wednesday night, as you said, I can look at the system and be like, look, we have 45 articles I need to look at, choose which ones make it into the newsletter and get that out. But kind of spinning it all around, this can definitely be used for member newsletters, right? The same thinking is all your members in a co-working space are creating news every hour that their business is alive. If you have a way of keeping track of that in some way, that then at the end of the month, you can filter and put out like a member newsletter, you've created a whole 3-tier layer of value for every single member, every potential member, every partner, every sponsor. And it's just about building the system. Now, I hope that answers the question, but that's kind of how I think about it. Is it's not about, creating algorithms that crawl the web, but putting together existing technologies into a process that works for us.
Yeah, and I'm curious on that note too. Like, I imagine in the early days of This Week in Co-working, it was a lot more proactive curation and going out and seeking information. And now, as the newsletter has evolved and taken off, and the membership or the subscriber base has grown, and I'm submitting stuff to you all the time, so I can only imagine the volume of reactive stuff that you're getting now. So I'm curious, how has the proactive versus reactive information sourcing changed over the years, and how, if at all, like has that reshaped the newsletter? Like, has that reshaped the approach? Has that reshaped the content? Has that reshaped like how you approach it? I'm curious how that kind of that transformation impacts the way you work.
It's a really interesting one. It's one that I think about a lot because, starting with the second part first, has it changed the newsletter? Yes. The newsletters used to go out with max 11 links. Now the average newsletter has 25 to 32 links, right? Like in that kind of range. So like, yes, we're putting more information, but that's because we're getting so much more high quality content that we think people need to know. So it's constantly a juggle of trying to figure out how do we balance that what we're fetching and what is being pulled in or is being thrown at us. The balance right now is we still take in a lot of submissions from our contributors. We have different tiers of contributors with regards to who submits actual resources and who's always submitting, this is marketing, this is marketing, this is marketing, buy our product, buy our product. And that kind of gets put into a sales funnel. But we still are very heavily on the proactive side when it comes to either emerging trends that we're picking up that people aren't really talking about in a coherent way in one conversation, or if there's regions that we think there's something really interesting happening there, and we know from Western media there's like 3 things that they want to talk about. Everything else is kind of spread across the internet or the Fediverse or whatever it is. So we proactively look for those stories and try to bring those contributors into what we're doing. It's also one of the reasons why we just rolled out Twit People, so people profiles, going back to what we were saying a little bit earlier around kind of personal brands that transcend brands. So you'll be touching multiple things throughout your career, co-working things. And so how do we highlight these people who touch multiple touch multiple projects, but then incentivize them in some way to become better contributors, to tell what's happening in their community, to share what's happening in their neighborhoods with their clients, with their, and so it's a bit of, trying to figure out how do we nurture a better contributor ecosystem and reward everyone as opposed to, constantly having to go out there, because at the back of our head, AI is coming rapidly, right? If we have to keep proactively seeking for things, AI search engines, AI browsers, all of these things are going to drastically change the way people interact with content. And so we always have to think about how do we create something that's human first so that we still stay that resource. Just like AI is not going to replace a co-working space, we're believing that AI won't change the experts and how they share in co-working. But, ask me in about 6 months, it'll probably all be burning by then.
We talk about that a lot on here. Is like we state an opinion now, and then who knows? This episode will drop in a month from when we recorded it, and who knows if it'll still be? Are we still going to be right by the time it comes out?
Well, may not even be right in the first place. That's the problem with us. But yeah, I mean, so Taylor is like his part-time job. I mean, his full-time job is content, but his part-time job seems to be chasing information to put into newsletters, at least the stuff that I see from him. We collaborate on a lot of projects and stuff. So it's not, he knows firsthand, it's not easy to extract that. And I love what you just said about incentivizing good contributors and good contribution from people proactively. Being our resident newsletter guru, not to say that Taylor's not also our resident newsletter guru, but being someone with a 4,000 person audience, tell us, what would be your recommendation? What advice would you give to someone in the co-working space looking to build a great newsletter? Taylor, you want to say something first?
No.
I would let Taylor do it.
I'm all ears here. I'm taking this advice like everybody else is. Just trying to play it cool, like I don't need the advice, but hey, you
leaned in heavily, your mouth open, you're ready. Yeah, tell us the goods.
So I think the main thing is send the email you want to receive, right? I know it sounds very cliche and very like internet wah, but how many emails do you get a day? I mean, I get a shit ton, right? I don't know if this is a swearing podcast, but that's a swear word now in this house.
You can swear.
So yeah, fantastic. So
encouraged.
So like, I think like the main thing is if you're going to interrupt someone's day, and I'm going to put a pin in that, because when I started sending the newsletter, I was very, very scared about interrupting really busy people who I respected, right? Back in the early days of the internet, you send an email newsletter out, someone wakes up in the morning, commutes to the office, puts their coffee on, sits down, then opens their computer and sees email. When you send email now, it goes to at least 3 devices connected to that human being whenever you send that email. And I think a lot of people forget that when they send out emails, transactional or whatever. It's like, oh, he'll read it when he wants to, or she'll read it. But like, are you cognizant of the fact that that person might be doing childcare or elder care, or maybe commuting, or maybe having a day, right? These things happen. And so I was very, very nervous about sending out those first emails. So that really framed around that first email that I sent out, those first 6, there was like 6 or 7 people. I made sure that there was so much value in there that I wanted to receive this email. Shit, man, if someone was sending me Twig in 2019, I wouldn't have done this because I wanted this to exist. I wanted to know what everyone was up to. I wanted to be able to use this insight in Syncaroo and strategic initiatives I was doing for other companies, but no one was doing it. So I had to. So if you get to put yourself in that position, what would you create that you as a member of your community would want to receive? Because it's very easy for us to be like, send a day pass discount or send a reminder about that event, or that's great, but why is someone opening the email? What are you giving them that they're looking forward to that next email coming whenever it's going to come? And that brings it back to the last point, consistency. Own your day, own your time. The amount of people who are like, let's say I'm traveling and the email is delayed or there's a technical glitch, and at 6:03 on a Thursday morning, I'll get an email, I'll be like, where's the newsletter, right? You have to just stay consistent so that you build that report.
Yeah. I really love that. Like, I love that thing you just said about, like, be cognizant that you are interrupting somebody's day, because technology is everywhere and they are going to see it. And it's like, it's not a negative, right? I think I don't want anybody to hear that and think like interrupting is a bad thing. It's not, because if it's good, then you're interrupting them with something they're looking forward to. But flipping the lens, it's also like, it makes you think about what you're sending. Are you just sending garbage for the sake of sending something? And if so, how is it going to be received by people? And then if they don't like that, if it bugs them, then what does that do to your brand? How does that reflect on your business, right?
And it's really hard to get someone who's unsubscribed to resubscribe. And it takes,
or even if you send them
second.
Even if you send them, if you send them stuff that is no good and you've done it maybe once or twice, you're like on thin ice. People may never open your emails again, even if they, it's like quiet quitting. They'll quiet unsubscribe. They'll just leave the email unread. So it's really tricky, right? You always, while we're swearing, the book Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit by Stephen Pressfield starts off with the premise that everyone's busy, and then with that in mind, how do you communicate in a way that people will receive and engage and want that? And it's tough, but you can. And on the flip side of that, Hector, and maybe you can speak to this, is like, you can't let that hold you back. You have to get out there, put in the reps, do your best, with that in mind, even if your confidence isn't super high, even if your skills level's not super high, but contributing as much as you can, right? And then working on building on that. Would you agree?
Also learning from things. Sorry to cut in there, but like, if you're not looking at what's performing well and what's not performing well and using that to inform future decisions, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. If you're sending blindly and you're not looking at what's going on, like I'm sure you've probably seen links in This Week in Coworking where you're like, oh, that got no love whatsoever. Maybe this isn't resonating with the audience. So it probably tweaks the way that you approach the next newsletter, maybe staying away from that kind of content. Like, you have to be learning and evolving based on what you're seeing. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, our guiding KPI at Twick or at This Week in Coworking is how many clicks do we get? Not like, is it clickbaity or any of that? Like, if people aren't clicking on what we're sending, then we're not creating value for them. I mean, we know many of our readers who literally just skim, but there should be something in every newsletter for someone that they're like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to open that up and save it for later. Or I'm going to open this up and send it to my marketing team. Or, very popular these days, I'm going to open it up and share it on Friday on LinkedIn, right? And that's always fun to see that ripple effect of people sharing the same article. And you're like, oh, I know who reads the newsletter now. So that's really fun. But yes, we track that right down. Obviously, it's all anonymized. I have no idea who clicks on any link. And that was the decision we made early on, which is counterintuitive to almost every email newsletter, right? You're not going to do this in a co-working space. You want to know which one of your members clicked on every one of the links. But I needed to very clearly separate the data about what is popular, what is interesting, what is useful, what are the trends, and who is clicking on it. So our analytics at This Week in Coworking, unless it's like the internal links, we can't see which member or which subscriber clicked on the link. We just know metrics of how many they clicked. And that was a really counterintuitive decision that I had to make very early on, because I also can't leverage that data to do cold outreach, right? I never wanted to be in that position where someone's like, oh, I clicked on a link from Syncaroo, and then all of a sudden you emailed me from Syncaroo. No, I needed to separate that, because I know when money comes into it, if someone takes over this company at some point, that's going to be the first thing that they're going to do. They're going to try and find that data, squeeze it, and then take advantage of the trust that audience put in the newsletter. And so you have to kind of make that decision from when I'm doing kind of a global agnostic industry newsletter. But internally, you should be leveraging that. If you put something together about the benefits of a membership pack and some prospect clicks on that link, and well, someone from your marketing team or your sales team should reach out to that person and close that deal, or bring them in for a tour or something. So it's slightly different from where I'm sitting at kind of like the 4,000 feet view. In a community, you want to be tracking those metrics. You want to be checking that open rate, checking who's clicking on what exactly are they clicking on. But then also knowing full well that security is getting really, really up there, privacy is getting really, really up there, and your metrics may be lies, right? Open rates are here nor there. Click rates are here nor there. There are click engines that run through all the clicks to check them for viruses. Is your system tracking those as clicks? So there's a lot when it comes to the data side around, if you're going to track data, how do you make sure that data is giving you signal, not noise, right? How do you know that click from a prospective member, how are you tracking that on your website? Are you tracking that it's an actual click? So you got to kind of think about that a little bit more as you start investing in your newsletters.
Yeah, and that actually leads me to a question that I wanted to ask you as well, right? Like, I think we're talking about all the benefits of tracking that data, and like, obviously, of course, your marketing team should be reaching out if somebody shows interest in a pack or whatever it might be. But like, what about people who haven't gone there yet and haven't invested into creating a newsletter or any sort of email marketing communications in their space? Maybe they haven't, put the work into it yet. We're talking about like what you should do with the data, but what about for those people who haven't gone there yet? What would you say to them? Like, what's the advice? Should you get moving with email marketing? Should you get moving with a newsletter? And if so, why?
I mean, email marketing is still the last open platform, right? yes, there's a lot of changes happening and there's more limitations around who can send emails to how many people, etc., which is all good things because spam takes up, what, 25% of processing power across the internet right now, which is a ludicrous amount of waste. So the more we can cut down that, the better. But if I were to start right now, I'd probably start the same way as I started, right? Find those 10 core members, tie it to your personal brand. You do not need to, like, just like if you're starting a podcast now, don't start a podcast for your company, just like with you two gents. Start it around what you do as individuals, and you happen to work at these brands. The same as This Week in Coworking was my personal newsletter that became This Week in Coworking, because I wanted to be more strategic around it. But starting out, if I was a co-working space leader right now, get the emails of your partners, sponsors, local businesses, and just send them an update around what's happening in your space. Try to focus on that value. Try to focus on getting replies. Try to focus on getting people just to kind of like open the email, because that's when you'll find your magic formula. I'm not saying it's going to be a curation newsletter like This Week in Coworking or a deep dive like Undercurrents. Just find what works for your community and then double down on that. And some of them are going to suck. Like, it's going to suck seeing people you know, people you've done business with, people you support unsubscribing. It sucks. But, you're interrupting their day. And that just means that you're not creating enough value for them to want to keep getting these emails. And that's fine. Like, an inbox and how they like you are not the same thing.
Yeah, it's funny. It's hard not to take it personally when you see somebody unsubscribe. Like, it happens
Taylor
from time to time.
unsubscribed to me a long time ago, so
Only digitally, unfortunately. They haven't found the human version of that one yet, but we're working on it. Boop. Unsubscribe to Kevin, just in general. See him in
now
a
we're getting
conference
into
and
like
just
Black
walk straight
Mirror,
past.
Black Mirror territory.
Exactly.
You just got to put on that chip. He's just a blur now. Like, I can't see it. There's some guy wearing a baseball cap. I don't know what he's doing here. It's mumbled.
I was just about to say we've been very low on Kevin and I giving each other a hard time on this episode, but here we are. Never fails. We're back.
We're back. Yeah.
It's such an interesting thing what you said about the 25% of the internet is spam, and not just like the annoyance toll, but also the like the energy that goes in. It's I never thought of it from that perspective, and that is something that I'm taking away from this that I think is fascinating. But
I mean, the problem is that's only going to get worse, right? Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah.
That's only going to get worse because now we're
going.
seeing AI agents messaging each other, right? You have a sales AI agent and then an outreach AI agent. And not only is it one-to-one, but they're emailing six different really companies or co-working spaces. And each of those 6 co-working spaces have their own agent. So they're all emailing back. And now this is backwards and forwards of just noise that no human's ever going to see. And it's like, okay, what does this mean for our inboxes, right? Like, what does it mean for, like, at what point does a human get looped in? Okay, here's a 300-page transcript of this conversation that 2 fictional freaking agents had with each other when you could have just Googled how much is a hot desk, right? So like, it could go the other way, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
That's sad.
It's insane. Probably could have powered a small village from that 300-page transcript with all the processing power that went into it too. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Or
I'm pro
co-working
technology,
space.
but that sounds very dystopian. What do you mean? What was that, Hector?
I was going to say, or a Caparo co-working space, right? Like I've been doing a lot of talks with folks who are kind of sitting in regions where electricity isn't a given, right? Co-working spaces where one of their core offerings is access to backup generators, access to contingency planning. And we're like, okay, yeah, that's great. But then we think on the other side, we have all these AI companies burning through electricity. And it's like, well, where's the balance between those two things? It's going to be really interesting to figure out what that looks like. Are we going to start limiting who can use our spaces? Same way as kind of, if you go back to, you remember the Bitcoin world and like the Web3 craziness that happened, where spaces had to really think about, do we let in crypto companies? Do we let them do mining from our data centers? Do we let them plug in any device without monitoring bandwidth, right? And I think we're going to see the same thing on the AI side, really thinking about, with this company's huge needs for energy, data, etc., is it going to change the memberships? And went off on a very big tangent there, but I'll let you guys get back to your show.
No, but it's super interesting too, because Sam Altman from OpenAI recently said that the processing power required from people just saying please and thank you to ChatGPT is like monumental. He's like, the human instinct to be polite to this robot it's there, but also you got to consider just like the environmental consequence or the resource consequence of being polite to an AI, which is something like, if you told me that we were going to be thinking about this like 2 years ago, I'd be like, what are you talking about? This is Black Mirror, but apparently here we are,
But then you're never going to stop me from saying please and thank you because they're going to remember.
I know. Same.
Yeah, when the AI overlords do take over, I want them to remember that I was polite. But to be fair, I have also had a few outbursts, so I hope that they can. I hope that they can kind of like find the middle ground between the two. Like, yeah, he's been rude here and there, but he's not such a bad guy.
Yeah,
we'll give him a special place in the Matrix.
We'll just put him on mute.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go get them like fresh cold oil like a robot bartender. Okay, I gotta stop this. I'm going on a weird rabbit hole here.
I didn't know this would be a dystopian technology podcast, but we're back, folks.
You never know where it's gonna go.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit more about nerdy technology stuff. So you are kind of like our data wizard, if you will. So you're helping operators pull together information, like data, like helping these, not yet AI robots, but maybe in the future, connect data so that they can make sense of it, so they can act on it, operate on it. Can you give us a little bit of maybe a quick snapshot into why that role is so important and what benefits and use cases are people getting from, Syncaroo and your related services in that space?
Yeah, sure. So the main instant result is the fact that we run these businesses, co-working businesses, on 30 to 50 disconnected platforms. Not only are they disconnected and kind of integrated, but operators are very quickly realizing that they're in data-led organizations, but they do not own their own data. And so operators are very quickly coming to the realization that if they don't have a plan in place for how they can bring their own data together in somewhere that they can control, they cannot use not the AI systems of today, but the AI systems of the future, because their data is spread between systems. We're seeing some companies now putting up tolls, charging companies to access APIs, charging bandwidth limits on kind of accessing, but it's your data, right? And so if you're not thinking about how best to strategize for what comes in the next, I was going to say 5 years, but probably in the next 6 months, you are not protecting your business as a CIO, as a CTO, whatever it is, or even a COO. A lot of the work we do is with COOs. So that's the data side, right? That's like the most dystopian view of the data play. But then if you look at the actual human side of it, what is your team doing all day, right? Whether it's a one person mom and pop shop or a 500 members staff across co-working brands, what are they doing? Is that what you hired them to do? When was the last time you took an audit of what does a day look like in my marketing team's job, or my sales team, or my front of house, or my janitorial team, or our F&B division? Like, what does their day actually look like? And which of those tasks are they doing just because that's the way it is, right? And if you can find enough that's because of the way it is, you can start automating away at those. And then all of a sudden you have a highly more productive team. They love their job more. They get to do what you actually hired them to do. The sales team gets to sell more. The community team gets to spend more time in the community, putting on events, being creative, instead of trying to piece together tech stacks that were not built for the people you hired. They were just built, and then you had to train them on using a system that wasn't built for them. So that's kind of the main takeaway. I would say that most companies benefit from working with us. And the other is just having a trusted agnostic partner who is like, we don't know what we don't know. We don't even know what's in our stack. Some guy installed it 6 years ago. Someone else added on top of that. There's an Excel file somewhere on a server. If we look at that file incorrectly, the internet switches off, right? And so like, there's all these little pieces that, yeah. So it's like those kind of pieces where we kind of really come in and we're like, okay, we don't work for any platform. We don't get any kickbacks from platforms. We make no commissions from platforms. Our job is to service every single operator and make their business more efficient and more profitable. If you can squeeze down the overhead that it takes per revenue line item, you get a stronger business on the other side. And that's a lot of my work, is really looking at it from an operational perspective. Tech and people come together to create an operating stack, not the way it's always been done, where you have a tech stack and train people against it.
And so what's the visible part of that? So how does that look once you've cleaned up some stuff, you've figured out what are the systems, you probably mapped it out, you maybe document what people are doing. Like what is the operating sort of dashboard or visible part of that look like once you're kind of done or things are up and running?
Great question. And if we do our job well and we do our job right, much like in Futurama, if we do everything right, it looks like we did nothing at all. Your marketing team should only ever look at a marketing platform. Your sales team should only look at a sales platform. And that's when we know we've done our job right? If your sales team only uses HubSpot and everything else gets updated automatically, that means we've done our job well. If your marketing team is only using ConvertKit or maybe even HubSpot or something else, and that's all you have to train them on, then everything else, their Office R&D, their Kissy, their Wi-Fi provisioning, all kick into place when something happens in their system. That means we've done our job right. So we're very big believers that technology should very quickly become invisible if it's doing its job. And that's where we focus on. So although we have a dashboard for maintaining and managing and tracking the synchronization, we don't want the team logging into that, right? If we do it well, your team can focus on operational, can focus on your dashboards that we create, you can focus on the outputs, not the technology. So we do bringing it all in a nice ribbon. We sell outcomes, not technology. And that's where what we classify as success.
Love it. Without going too far down the technology stack realm, just in terms of data that people are using, I'm going to focus on that portion. I know it's not all you do and you're doing all these other things, but like, what are people looking at mostly and using to make decisions on? Like what are some maybe key metrics or data points you think that people want to have, but maybe don't have a clean access to, or maybe through your work or through their own efforts have found, and basically what data are they relying on most or should be relying on more to make the most informed decisions? I know that's a broad question, but does anything come to mind in that realm?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is knowing where your revenue comes from, being able to attribute each dollar that comes into the business, and then being able to classify exactly how much overhead are you paying for each one of those dollars. Like if you have those two numbers, you can get really strategic around, we should do more VO or we should do more fractional offices. But if you don't know where your money's coming from and how much you're spending to service every dollar, you might as well just throw the money up and hope to catch as much of it as you can.
Great example. I'm thinking virtual mail is something that some do very well and some people don't have internal resources for, or don't necessarily know if they do. And they're trying to make a business case as to whether they should staff that or pull from other people. And so that would be a great example of how profitable is this particular service, or not, right? Anything else like that come to mind, or is that kind of the main one that you focus on? I'm sure many come to mind, but any other kind of spicy ones?
Another one that's really, really interesting is looking at non-traditional data sources, non-traditional data sets. So one of my favorite ones is how frequently are you stocking your kitchen and or your loo roll in the restrooms, right? It doesn't sound like something that sounds exciting or interesting, but you can detect churn really, really well by people not using either of those two places.
I was going to say it's not exciting until it's not there. It's not exciting until a member goes into the washroom and you've slipped on that one.
Yeah, but also if you keep going to go refill it, if you keep going back to refill it and there's a pileup of toilet rolls, that's a signal of potential churn, right? People aren't coming in enough to use the services that are bodily functions. It doesn't matter what they tell you of how happy they are. They're not coming in. And yes, it's great to see kind of scans at the door and detect Wi-Fi usage. But if they're not using your functionality, your features and your products, because the toilet's not the product, right? But they can't use an office for the entire day and not go to the restroom at least once, right? If you are, please speak to a doctor.
Good challenge.
Challenge accepted.
That's interesting. Yeah. So, I'm a big data nerd. It sounds like what I love about you is you bring a rigor of like process engineering that comes through software and web development, and you're applying it to data, and you're applying it to operational systems. And I do that in a very kind of like, we've decided we're going to do these things, so here's how we're going to do them. But what I love about what you do, and we should definitely partner more on these types of things, but you create that feedback loop with data so that you don't just know like, here's what we decided to do, but there's really this element of, is this thing working? What are some early, signals that something is working or not? And really reinforcing your systems. I'm a big fan of that mindset, and it sounds like a super valuable, asset to have these things working and giving you those kinds of feedback so you can make decisions from them. Anything else come to mind before we switch kind of tracks on the questions, or in terms of data and technology and how best people can leverage them?
I think a lot of people still sleep on Wi-Fi data, like how much people are using your bandwidth, where are they using it, how many devices is every person bringing in. I think that's a really useful data set that not many people are actually thinking about. What does this say about my space, about my design, about the functionality that we built, the features that we've added? And on the flip side of that is, do you know what kinds of devices are being used? Because you cannot make tech decisions without either asking your members every 6 months about what devices they're using, or having some smart mechanism for collecting that data in a privacy-centric way. Like knowing that 90% of your office is iOS means that you can start thinking about Apple Wallet. If it's 50-50, you have to have a strategy that imposes, Google Wallet plus Apple Wallet. If none of your space is using it and you happen to be in a region where everyone is using, traditional non-smartphones, you need to design an SMS-based authentication system or support tickets, so you can't just take systems from the internet and be like, oh, well, they use this in Google, so I'm going to use it. Yeah, Google can control what devices people have. In your co-working space, you have to be reactive, and you have to monitor that consistently to make sure you're supporting your members.
Love it.
It's so interesting. Yeah. All these things that I guess like in my marketing silo, I don't probably think as much in my day to day about operations, but all these considerations that people have to make when they're running a co-working space, I never would have probably thought of until you mentioned those.
It's hard enough to do marketing, let alone everything else, as you know very well. All right. Well, switching tracks a bit. So thanks for that. I think the data and systems mindset and those feedback loops and having stuff connect together and really owning it, like you said, really valuable stuff. You see a lot of news and events that are happening across our industry, and you're very attuned to kind of these, trends that are occurring and patterns. I'm guessing you're using that single LLM you have up there in your noggin. What would you say you're noticing in the last? I mean, I feel like there was the pre-COVID era, there's kind of a post-COVID era, and then even the last year or two, things are kind of really evolving quickly. Is there anything that you've noticed in just kind of generally that people are saying to you more? You're also very keen at getting feedback from people, needing more, selling more of, doing successfully. Is there anything trend-wise that's really working out there that people should pay attention to?
I mean, new product types is always an interesting one, right? Going back to the kind of the systems processing and tracking, and giving your team the ability to be very, very flexible, knowing that you can have full confidence in testing new kinds of products, whether it's a fractional office or a couple pass or a student pass or a pass especially for accountants around April, right? If your systems don't work that allow you to test these new products, you're leaving money on the table because you're just like, yeah, we can't, and not making a decision is a decision, right? So kind of keep pushing that down the road means your competitors who can are going to absorb that market demand before you can even think about how to implement it. So that's one that I'm seeing is there's a huge variety of different products that are coming to market, and you need to be well positioned to be able to adapt and experiment really, really quickly and be able to, throw the baby out with the bathtub if it's not working, right? And just carry on with kind of the next concept. That's the one. The other is stacking revenue, right? Stacking your revenue sources so that each member becomes more ingrained, finds more value, but is also spending more money with your space, right? This could be additional add-on services. It could be, a partner marketing service. It could be a podcast service. Something that creates a value for them, but that isn't traditional co-working. And we're seeing this explode in a whole bunch of different areas around the globe, from coffee memberships to premium coffee to concierge level services to notaries, to lawyers, to marketing, to website. Everyone is trying to figure out what does the next super app of co-working look like, and how does it drive revenue and stickiness into your co-working space. Outside of that, there's a huge debate around aggregators and dynamic pricing and kind of third-party channel partners. That's a huge debate that's happening right now, right? I don't know what it's going to look like a year from now. I know that people aren't ever 5 years from now going to log into an app, search on a map, look at pictures of an empty space, click a desk they know nothing about, go through a checkout process. That's not going to be how people interact with spaces. And so that is a huge emerging trend with, AI search and AI browsers, and the fact that more and more people's days are being planned by their AI agents. The way they interact with physical space are going to be completely different. And so how do you provide that huge level of expertise and hospitality when someone doesn't even know which space they're coming to? Google Calendar told me to come here. I have a meeting in 10 minutes. Where do I go?
Lots to think about there. Yeah, I love it. I think of co-working as a platform. And when you think of your operation as this is a platform, it brings together people. They're all on a mission to grow their businesses and to be successful in their endeavors. What can we do to create value adds or partnerships or additional revenue streams, or to do co-promotion, co-branding? There's all kinds of avenues from there. And I think that's really where innovation comes from. So you've successfully filled your space. You've gotten bodies in the door. Great. But what are you going to do to create that ecosystem, that flywheel, and basically create a moat? If everyone thinks they're in this category and you think of yourself as not being in the co-working category, but in the platform category, and platform just being kind of a place to house people and to support them, and then you can start in bringing in more, it's probably community is the best term for this, which we already use, but just a good, I feel like there's so much room for innovation. I feel like we're barely scratching the surface. And to go back all the way to the beginning, it's about customer centricity. What are people asking for? What are they using? How much toilet paper are they utilizing in a given day? And bringing it all together I think there's tons of room for innovation. I love those examples that you used. Taylor, is there anything you want to add to this conversation? I know we're kind of coming up on an hour, but maybe some final.
I feel like I'm always learning more than I'm putting out on this podcast.
You can tell.
Every time we talk to somebody, I feel like I'm getting I'm supposed to be asking the questions, but I'm getting this massive influx of valuable information. So I'm walking away with more to chew on than I'm contributing. But no, I have nothing further to contribute. I think this was really, really awesome and super insightful.
Okay, I'm going to throw you on the spot with one, because we have 2 minutes. One question, Hector. What's your best trick for using AI currently? Just one.
Detecting if people are submitting AI content.
Ooh, that's good. Taylor, we better watch out, buddy. We did a whole podcast on this too, about the, creating content and using AI and all the stigma that comes from using AI and stuff. So detecting AI content, and why is that important? I know it's a cool trick, but yeah.
Because a lot of people submit and generate content online that lands up in the Twig feed, right? Being able to quickly detect whether this is a value add to the discussion, or it's just regurgitating someone's YouTube video or someone's previous post, allows us to save so much operational overhead. Once again, going back to the system, right? If we spend so much time trying to filter out the newsletter, it becomes unsustainable. And if it's unsustainable, then if it loses me money, I switch it off, right? And that hurts the 4,000 teams that rely on it every Thursday. So it is in my job description to make sure that whatever we do keeps the value up, but doesn't make it too expensive to service. And that is where AI shines.
Love it.
Yeah. I also, just as a content guy, I've always, in the last couple of years as AI has developed, I've really felt this kind of onus and responsibility to make sure that, what's in Die Hard, Bruce Willis says, if you're not part of the problem, you're part of this. Or if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Stop being part of the problem. And I'm with AI content being so big now, I feel an onus as a person who operates in the content sphere to make sure that I'm doing my part to kind of quell shitty AI content. And what you're talking about with, AI detection tools, I think are really a valuable thing. It's making sure that you're suppressing AI, shitty AI content, and making sure that you're prioritizing the high quality. And hopefully over time, as more and more people do stuff like what you're doing, it kind of sends a signal to anybody who works in the content realm or operates in that realm to focus on quality. Don't take the easy or the cheap route out and do something that doesn't add value.
Look at the big platforms, right? Look at YouTube, look at LinkedIn. They're all implementing 2-week delays on monetization and or distribution so they can figure out what kind of content it is, because they have a much larger data set. But you also have to do the same thing kind of as a co-working leader. What are you putting in front of your members? How do you detect whether this is just regurgitated mush, or is it something that delivers insight, value, something that is worth opening, clicking, and hitting reply?
Honestly, I think people feel it too. I don't need an AI. Yeah, an AI algorithm that detects AI writing, sure, valuable, obviously super valuable in certain use cases. But
And at
the
high
reality
volumes.
is, yeah, but the reality is people can feel it, right? And like whether they know it or not, it's just like you're either creating an emotion and a feeling and value, or you're not. And I think that's so whether we can sneakily sneak under the radar with some AI content or not, really the question goes back to your points about the email is how do I make this something people want to consume, they ask for, and I think it's like a proxy for that more important thing, which is breathe life into your communications, breathe life into your brand, your business, have it start from the source, which is you and your brain, and maybe use tools to help polish or clean up or whatever. But that's like the low level admin stuff. Don't make it the main star in the show, because whether people can kind of quote unquote detect it or not, people can feel it. And I think that's a key takeaway in all kinds of messaging here.
Preach, brother.
Preach. Amen. Well, thank you, Hector, so much for giving up a whole hour of your time. Our 14 listeners are super grateful for you, and I know, it'll be worthwhile for you. Where can people go? So I know getting on your mailing list, the co-working world's best newsletter at thisweekincoworking.com. And then I guess Syncaroo would be the best place to learn about your services. Where would you like people to kind of go just to get started in the world ecosystem of Hector and Co?
You can head over to hectorkolonas.com. That's like my personal space on the internet. As with all things, it's probably the least updated of my content properties, but that's probably where you can get to go me. Definitely connect on LinkedIn. That's where I like to chat. And to the other 13 subscribers, hi, I'm one of you.
I was like, yeah, hopefully we can add like 2 to 3 new subscribers, but I really doubt that we can.
We can. We have Hector now.
Actually, you'll probably get both of our moms and both of our wives. So
yeah, liking the post. Yeah, that's
Plus
4 people right there. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'll ask my dog too.
Yeah, anyone's welcome. It's an open platform. But Hector, thank you so much for contributing your time and expertise. It's been a pleasure. We love meeting with you at all the conferences. We'll see you at the GWA conference in Chicago in October.
Chicago, correct.
Yeah, great stuff.
I'll see you guys there.
I'm excited for that.
To it.
Thanks for having me on, Jones. Keep doing what you're doing. As I said, the email went to 6 people, right? 4,000-ish teams. Keep doing it. I'm a big supporter and big fan of what you guys are doing. Thank you for having me on as one of your first guests. It's great to kind of just get here and geek out about all things that will probably age like milk. Fantastic.
Yeah.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, we'll bring you on next year for our annual Outdated Information podcast. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Hector.